It's good to see that you're all settling down now. I was very pleased with the sitting before lunch. There was complete silence. Everyone was in the zone. It was wonderful. It's good, starting to settle down a little bit. This afternoon, we're going to continue looking at the fourth foundation of mindfulness, Dhammanupassana, contemplation of phenomena, contemplation of Dhammas. This morning we looked at the 5 hindrances, those mental states which cause confusion and block the arising of wisdom, block the arising of concentration and samadhi. We need to note them and know them. We need to be able to relinquish our subjective interest in these mental states. They will naturally pass away if we don't give them any attention. If we don't give it attention, it passes away. This afternoon we're going to look at the opposite set of these 5 hindrances. The opposite set is known as the Satta Sambojjhanga, the 7 enlightenment factors. These 7 enlightenment factors are a very important part of the Buddha's teaching. Satta means 7, Sambojjhanga. Bo means comes from the root body. It means to be awake. It means to know. We call that, the word Buddha comes from that as well, the same root. The Buddha means the one who knows, the knowing. What you go back to when you really understand the true nature of experience. Knowing arises. Sambojjhanga. Anga is a suffix. It means causative. It's a causative suffix. So Bojjhanga means the cause of arising of enlightenment. These 7 enlightenment factors actually elevate and lift consciousness out of samsara, out of the conditioned matrix in which you are currently dwelling as a person, stuck in a realm of duality, always being someone, taking the objects around you as being for me, being mine, and generating a sense of I out of them. The 7 enlightenment factors are a team. They work together. They all have their own special function. On the retreat here, as we develop these 4 satipatthanas, as we're noting and knowing on the foundations of mindfulness, noting and knowing bodily sensations, feelings, mind states, and the phenomena, the contents of the mind. As we're noting and knowing this, as we're doing this particular exercise, these 7 enlightenment factors are being developed right now. And they're growing stronger and stronger. The first 3 of these enlightenment factors are mindfulness, investigation, and energy. Mindfulness is sati. Investigation, dhammavichaya, it's the aspect of wisdom. And energy. These 3 things are what we need to develop in the present moment. We need to make these 3 start turning. We're activating, noting, and knowing. Activating, noting, and knowing. Activating our awareness in the present moment. Noting what is present in the bowl of consciousness. What is the conscious experience that is being cognized right now? And then we're stepping back from it. We're knowing it just as an object over there on the table. We're not becoming involved with it. If we can do this systematically, rising, falling, sitting, rising, falling, sitting, rising, falling, sitting, lifting, moving, placing, lifting, moving, placing. By doing this activity, we're generating the first 3 enlightenment factors. And when these enlightenment factors become continuous and become strong enough, the next 4 enlightenment factors start to develop along the way. Some of you will start to experience these enlightenment factors on the retreat this week. You'll need to work continuously to do so. Between 5 and 10 days should be able to be enough for you to have a little taste of what we're talking about. If you work continuously, if you're stopping and starting, if you're using the walking time for just looking at the trees and wandering around, wasting your time, it may take a great deal longer than 5 or 10 days. You'll need to be as present as you possibly can. Over the next few days, we'll discuss these 7 enlightenment factors. Today, I just want to talk about the first one, Sati Sambojjhanga, the enlightenment factor of mindfulness or awareness. We've spoken a little bit about it already. And then we'll talk about the sitting meditation and the walking meditation a little bit more. Mindfulness is the general translation we have of sati. You may have noticed in our chanting, maybe, Buddha nusati, Dhamma nusati, Sangha nusati, recollection of the Buddha, recollection of the Dhamma, recollection of the Sangha. Sati has a secondary meaning. It means to recollect. Actually, the meaning of sati means to bring to mind. We're calling that mindfulness in English. I prefer the term awareness myself. Mindfulness has become a little bit wishy-washy. There's so many different mindfulness practices now that are quite far removed from what we're talking about today, the development of the enlightenment factor of mindfulness. My teacher in Myanmar, he called it observing power, the power of observing. And I think that's a good translation. It's the ability to observe in the present moment whatever is occurring. Not only observing, but penetrating into the experience. We're using our noting part of the practice to generate this enlightenment factor of mindfulness. Mindfulness is dynamic. It's confrontive. It's not just a passive experience. Mindfulness jumps and leaps on to its objects. It covers them completely, sinking into them and penetrating, not missing any part of it. When we're trying to watch the sensations created by the rise and the fall of the abdomen, first of all, we're using 2 mental factors, aiming and sustaining. We're aiming and directing our attention to this location, bringing our awareness here. And we're trying to sustain it in this location. It jumps around, doesn't it? Comes back up to some hearing going on, or some thinking going on, or some painful sensation in the legs somewhere. It's not easy to stabilize it. Actually, concentration is, or samadhi, is more about stability than over-focusing on something. When we're using aiming and sustaining our awareness to a particular location, mindfulness does the job of penetrating into the object. It's mindfulness, enlightenment factor of awareness, that penetrates and sinks in to the rising and falling movement. We have to get up nice and close to it. This will start to occur if you're persistent, if you're continuous, if you keep turning your attention and keep aiming at this location. eventually your mind will get it. The mind is an amazing thing. It's very, very trainable. You can teach it to do many different things. You can teach it to learn different languages, you can teach it music, you can teach it all kinds of fascinating sciences and arts. It can be creative. Here, we're sending and directing our awareness onto this particular location of the rise and the fall. And we're spreading out our awareness to fill the whole body as well. So it's not just a little point, but it can be a field of awareness as well that we penetrate into, that we sink into. The characteristic of mindfulness is non-superficiality. Mindfulness is not superficial. It's not just hearing or touching. It actually sinks in. When you note hearing occurring, you should send your awareness right to the ear. Become aware of it right at the source. When your knee starts to hurt, don't sit there commenting and complaining about the pain. Send your awareness and sink into the actual sensation that's occurring in that location. And if you're feeling some kind of mood or some kind of emotion, sink into that as well. Really feel what it's like to be in that mood. Try to do it objectively, without taking it personally. Just try to feel what that experience is like. Feel what the emotion is really doing to you. Feel the agitation and the shakiness in the mind. Feel the different sensations that arise in the body when that type of emotion arises. Become very, very familiar with the object. That means mindfulness is not superficial. It doesn't float on the surface. It's not a plastic bottle floating down the stream. It's a rock that you've thrown into the river. It's sunk into the river, down into the bottom, down onto the bed of the stream. Experiencing the stream in its fullness, not just floating along the surface. In our practice, we're trying to sink in to the rising and falling. We're trying to get as close as we possibly can. Trying not to get distracted, sinking, getting in there, getting in there, getting in there, until it starts to feel like it's coming closer to your awareness. Other sense doors, while they're still open, their objects are not interfering so much anymore. We're much more interested in the rising and falling. The rising and falling can be a little bit boring. We choose it because it has a neutral feeling. It doesn't excite us. There's no unpleasantness and there's no pleasantness. It's neutral. Specifically for that reason is why we use it. And because there's a lot of sensations that arise there as well. So we're trying to sink in and experience that. It will start to come up. You'll feel it getting closer and closer until the movement, until maybe you start to merge in with that rising and falling movement. When your awareness and the movement start to get very close, you'll start to sink into it. Everything else will be left behind. You'll be inside. That's the enlightenment factor of mindfulness. Penetrative and stable, knowing that object. We're training to be able to penetrate on this particular location. As the retreat goes on, we'll be selecting other objects as well to penetrate into. Eventually, as the practice develops, we open up to a open awareness of whatever is arising and passing away. Whatever is going on, we note it. And that's for later in the week. The function of mindfulness is non-disappearance. Its purpose is so that we don't lose focus on what we're doing. The objects don't disappear when this enlightenment factor is being developed. And you'll know it, as I just mentioned, the manifestation of this enlightenment factor occurs when your awareness confronts the object and you can start to see the details of it. When there's somebody 100 meters away walking towards you, you can see the person. You may not know if it's a man or a woman. They get a little bit closer. Oh, you can make out some details. You're not quite sure who it is yet. If you have eyes like mine, they have to get a little bit closer. They get a little bit closer. And somebody's walking towards you, and the closer you get to them, the more confronting you get to that person, you'll make out more and more details until you're right up in front of their face and you can see all the details on their skin. That's what the enlightenment factor of mindfulness is like when it penetrates into the rising and falling movement. All the sensations that are there become clearly recognizable. The vibration, the pushing, the pressure, the expansion, contraction, tension, twisting, warmth, coolness, all of them. You'll start to become very clearly aware of these sensations when you get up nice and close. It takes effort. You need to activate your awareness continuously during your sitting. It's not just become present at the start and hope it goes well for 45 minutes. You have to be on it. You have to be switched on. Your presence needs to be continuous. You can do that by paying attention to the whole body. Turn on. One of my favorites, if the mind has wandered a little bit, you can use hearing to snap you back into the present moment. The object of hearing is always available. The ears are always open. There's always, normally, some sound in the environment. So ear consciousness arises. Hearing is there. You can turn your attention to it to snap you back into the present moment. Once you're back in, become aware of the whole body again, and then aim and sustain your awareness down to the location and allow mindfulness to get closer and closer until it penetrates into the movement. When it penetrates in and it's not distracted, you'll start to see things as they really are. You'll move beyond the car and the car parts, and you'll go into the actual nature of your body. You'll start to see earth, water, fire, and air. We need to apply a sharp degree of care. We need to be meticulous. You can't be sloppy in this work. Sloppiness doesn't work. If you've been sloppy in your other activities, now's the time for you to take care in what you're doing. People that can take care or are interested in the quality of their work always do well in meditation. People who don't really, doesn't matter what you're doing. If you really take care and you take a little bit of pride even, and pride's not a great attribute, but you want to do the job correctly and it needs to be done properly. If you have that kind of attitude, if you go about your work, you go about your studies, you go about your relationships, your life is going to be much better. If you're kind of sloppy, do a kind of half job, if it's, oh, that'll do, or that's good enough. If you're a good enough type of person, your meditation practice may take a very long time. You need to be a little bit of a perfectionist. You need to be methodical and really turn and spend your attention on doing this practice. If you like things to be done properly, this is the practice for you. It will take you all the way to a full understanding of reality. We can keep watching the rising and falling movement. There is so much knowledge and so much wisdom that is contained right in this little spot. Not just the physical sensations, but all kinds of things. The law of cause and effect, the general characteristics, anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, suffering and non-self. We can see all kinds of wonderful knowledges, insights that arise just from looking at this one location. When mindfulness becomes fully established on its object of observation, when there's no misses, you'll sink into it deeply and you'll start to see for yourself what needs to be done. We mentioned the other day that it would be desirable if we could be noting continuously. Your noting of presently arising objects should be rapid. We don't push you into it in the first day. But today we're going to give you a little bit more homework to do. We're going to put another weight down the bottom of the gym, increasing our work from 30 kilos to 40 kilos. That means we're going to increase to another main object. The fourth main object is touching. It's the sensation of your butt cheeks touching the floor or touching the mat. A touching sensation. The touching sensation is different from the sitting sensation. Sitting is awareness of the whole body. Touching is awareness of just the little point where your seat bone is touching the mat. Just that little pressure point. It may be on the left side or the right side, up to you. You can alternate if you're feeling fancy. You can just choose one. Feel that touching point. Send and direct your awareness to that touching point. We integrate the touching point into our main object. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. So we have 4 things to pay attention to. We have extra work to do. This is going to make you note a little bit faster. If you have 12 breaths per minute, now you'll be noting 48 things per minute. It's going to be work. It's not hammock meditation where you sit there listening to some chanting. It's not a relaxing practice. It takes effort. You're going to need to turn on the engine of your mind to do this practice. We quickly turn our awareness to the touching sensation between the end of the in-breath, between the end of the out-breath and the beginning of the new in-breath. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. You're going to have to be quick to fit it in if you do not want to disturb your breath, and we don't want to disturb the breath. There's only a little gap. Rising, falling, a little gap. In that little gap, you quickly turn your awareness to experiencing the sensation of the whole body, and then you quickly direct and send your awareness to the touching point on the floor, and you quickly make a note of that, and then you come back to the rising and falling as quickly as you can without disturbing the breath. Don't worry if things are not clear to you on the first round. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. Oh, it's not working. It's not like that. rising, falling, sitting, touching, rising, falling, sitting, touching, rising, falling, sitting, touching, rising. You need to get into a rhythm. You need to get the mind into a pattern. The mind likes patterns, especially patterns of 4. Dun, 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 dun. Like a train, when it's pulling out from the train station, it starts slowly, and you warm it up. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. Don't spend your time trying to completely investigate and see either the sitting object or the touching object. In the beginning stages, it's enough for you to just be generating energy moving from these 4 objects. Don't worry if it's not clear yet. Don't worry if you don't know anything while you're doing this. Have no concern about the results of your practice. Have no concern about whether it's working or not working. Your job is to do the work. The results will take care of themselves. If you really just do it, it will start to show itself. You don't need to be concerned about the results of your practice. It becomes clearer and clearer as you keep doing it. Don't have any doubt about your ability to do the training. Millions of people are able to do it, and you are also one of those people. So don't be concerned about that. If you have any doubt, oh, it's not working, quickly note that doubt, note it away, note it and know it. Yes, it will feel like you are very busy. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. Rising, falling, sitting. Lost. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. Rising, Yes, it's busy. Yes, you need to be fast. That's what we're doing. We're training the mind to be supremely present, jumping from one object to another, learning how to penetrate objects as they arise. The sitting object and the touching object are always there. They arise and they pass away when consciousness cognizes them. When consciousness knows that object, it arises. When consciousness stops knowing that object, it passes away. The consciousness passes away. Obviously, the body is still here. Your body is not going to disappear. It's still going to be here. Don't be concerned about that. Touching is always here as well, unless you're one of these wonderful people who can start levitating. Your body is going to be touching the floor somewhere. So you can choose the point that is most clear and obvious to you. You all have different sitting styles and patterns and cushions, and some of you have made nice little nests for you to sit in. Note where the touching is occurring. Send your awareness to that touching point, penetrate into it, note it, and quickly come back to the rising and falling. We're training the mind to become aware of physical sensations, of the whole posture, and of the arising and passing away of the consciousness of touching. This is a physical object which is always present, but consciousness is cognizing it and then not. So it arises and it passes away. And we're moving in this pattern over and over again, as quickly and as efficiently as our breath allows us to. If you become lost in the 4-stage sitting, come back to the 3-stage. That's okay as well. If you become lost in the 3-stage, come back to the 2-stage, rising and falling. You may want to start with just rising and falling, and then when you're comfortable, you can add in the sitting. And then when you're more comfortable, add in the touching. But I would emphasize to you your ability to jump, direct, sustain your awareness, penetrate into different objects is best done with a great deal of effort. Don't be lazy in your meditation. Don't take the easy way. Of course, rising and falling is easy. You can just sit there. It's not very interesting. But spend a few days doing this. You'll get very bored. Don't forget to note boring, boring. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. Rising, falling, sitting, touching. So we're training the mind to go into this pattern. Dunk, 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 dunk. Making our awareness more and more continuously as we can. You can experiment for yourself and emphasize some part of the four in a different way. For example, you can do sitting, touching, rising, falling. Sitting, touching, rising, falling. Exactly the same order, but you're just starting with awareness of sitting, awareness of touching, and then you quickly move, dunk, dunk, and then back up, sitting, touching, dunk, dunk. Sitting, touching, rising, falling. So you can play around with it if you like. It's exactly the same, but for some people it seems to be a little bit easier if their sitting, touching is before the rising and falling. So you can try and you can experiment with that. When our mindfulness becomes continuous, when we're noting and knowing in these four stages, you'll find that your mindfulness and wisdom creates quite a strong barrier for the arising of the five hindrances. You don't have time to think about anything else. There's no time to have that conversation with your mother, sitting, oh yeah, well we should do, yeah, let's catch up, what have you been doing? Oh, yeah, I miss you too, blah, blah, blah. No time for that. You're busy, you're moving, rising, falling, touching, You're well engaged in your task. It's like when you're interested in doing something, you don't get distracted whilst you're doing it. When you're scrolling for hours through your Facebook feed, you're not distracted. You can become quite concentrated in that stuff. 9 o'clock at night, you're all exhausted. You want to go straight to bed. If we gave you your phone, I'm sure you'd be awake until 11 o'clock at night. Maybe even 1 in the morning. A lot of energy can be found for scrolling, can't it? So take your energy that you use in scrolling and bring it to your meditation practice. And apply it to these 4 stages, these 4 steps. If you can maintain it continuously, the mindfulness acts as a barrier. The 5 hindrances will be blocked out of the present moment. Mindfulness will start to penetrate into each of these 4 objects. You'll start to get very close. You'll start to be feeling like you're submerged inside. That makes it penetrative. And there'll be a great purity that comes over the mind as well. There'll be pleasantness that starts to arise. When the 5 hindrances and defilements of greed, hatred and delusion, when they're kept at bay, when they're blocked from arising, then you'll feel a sense of purity in the mind. And there's a great deal of pleasantness that arises with that as well. You'll start to feel a certain lightness in your body. Most importantly, you'll start to become interested in the practice. There's an enthusiasm that arises. The first time that you penetrate into the rising and falling, it's like, oh, it's happening. I'm in there. It's working. When it starts to work, when you start to get in there, Don't panic. Just note it's working. Excited, excited. Yes, yes, I got it, I got it. Note whatever is going on in your mind. Look out for any desire to repeat that experience. That's the recipe for suffering. Trying to experience again an old meditation experience. You sit there wanting. I want to get it back. I had it this morning and now it's gone. Don't do that. Each meditation session is a new one. If you have a good session, at the end of it, just reflect a little bit. What were the conditions that were in place for that particular sitting? How were your legs organized? How were your hands? How much food did you eat? What time of day was it? Did you have a shower before? Did you put on your favorite clothes? Whatever it was. And try to repeat those conditions. Meditation is a conditioned phenomena. It arises when all the conditions are lined up. So we have to pay attention to that as well. So this enlightenment factor is one part of the team that does the work of penetrating into the present moment and penetrating into the object of the mind. Mindfulness is what brings us into the present so that we're right here and right now. It gives our life full clarity and meaning. There are 6 other enlightenment factors that we'll go through on the retreat. All of them do their own special task. All of them are supporting the conscious awareness, the knowing that is arising. The cause of mindfulness is nothing more than mindfulness itself. The cause of mindfulness is the effort to activate presence. If you keep activating, keep bringing yourself back to the present, that's how it arises. It won't arise just magically. It's much easier for the mind to be in the past and the future, wandering in the sea of imagination or thinking about its past traumas or successes. It's very easy for it to do that. It loves to do that. Oh, relive my glory days. When I was a young man, it was so wonderful. Or you're thinking about the future, when I become a huge success. Planning all those things. It's easy to do that because it's not real, it's just nonsense. It's just floating, just mind states floating around. It's much more difficult to continuously bring our awareness back to the present moment. The more often that you can do that, the more mindfulness will grow. It's as simple as that. It's a process of collecting moments of mindfulness until they become continuous and you're continuously present. When you're continuously present, it will be quite an experience for you. Some of you may have experienced it before. You're right here, right now. Nothing is concerning you at all. Everything is very sparkly, everything is very clear. Your body feels light, your mind is purified. There's a brightness about yourself and there's a brightness about the world. The hindrances have been suppressed and the mind's going into a stabilized state of observation. Naturally, there's a difference between this enlightenment factor at the beginning of your practice and at the end of the practice. But it's just a manner of quality. And that quality can be worked on as you continuously do the practice. Incline the mind towards activating awareness. As soon as you notice that you've wandered away somewhere else, hearing, sitting, touching, rising, falling, sitting, come back. As soon as you notice that you started thinking about it, chop it. Don't entertain it. Don't be one of these people when someone's knocking at your front door trying to sell you a vacuum cleaner. You open, oh, please come in and sit down on my sofa and annoy me for an hour. You don't do that. You just open the, no thank you, we have clean floors, goodbye. Over. Sometimes you have to be a little bit rude to yourself. You're not in the entertainment business. You're not a performer. You're not the host inviting all your guests around and all your friends to come and sit around and chatter inside your head. You don't have to entertain those thoughts. You can put them away. I want to talk about the walking meditation a little bit as well. Up until now, we've been doing the 3-stage walking meditation. I'd like to increase that to 4 stages. Lifting, raising, moving, placing. Lifting, it looks like this. Lifting, raising, moving, placing. Lifting is taking your heel off the floor only. Raising is lifting your foot up. Moving is pushing it forward. Placing is lowering it and touching the floor. It's very, very important, and I've seen a few of you doing just a generalized movement as you're walking around outside. This is ineffective. It doesn't work. You need to make sure that there's a gap in each of the stages. Lifting, stop. Raising, stop. Moving, stop. Placing, stop. Lifting, stop. Raising, stop. Moving, stop. Placing, stop. Try to make it as mechanical as you can, like a robot. Try to make each of the stages about the same length of time. You don't have to go super, super slow. Most of you are walking very, very slowly. If you have 45 minutes to do your walking meditation, use the first 15 minutes to walk just a little bit faster, just so that you can gain some rhythm. Lifting, raising, moving, placing. Lifting, raising, moving, placing. Lifting, stop. Raising, stop. Moving, stop. Placing, stop. Make sure that you catch the end of each of those stages. These are individual objects. The lifting is one object. It has a particular sensation associated with it. You keep paying attention to the lifting movement. If you keep sending your awareness into your foot while you're doing that lifting movement, if you penetrate into that movement, there's a sensation waiting there to greet you. When that sensation is seen, make a note of it. Don't hunt for it. Don't wish to find it. Make sure you're not doing your walking meditation with a wish to experience something special. Our work involves only putting conditions in place. You're just doing the exercise. Allow the results to appear by themselves. The sensation that appears while we're pushing our foot forward is different from the sensation that appears when we're putting our foot down. These are two separate objects. They arise, exist, and pass away. The next one arises, exists, and pass away. They're a little frame in the very long stream of frames that is your life. We're trying to break up this very fast-flowing movie that we call life. We're trying to break it up into segments and penetrate each segment so that we can see it clearly. We're trying to deconstruct our experience. We're trying to pull it all apart. Because when it's all together, it appears like there's a person in there. But when you pull it all apart and you see each part clearly, There's nobody there. What is there? It's for you to find out. It's for you to experience for yourself. It's for you to penetrate the truth and see the truth of Dhamma. Then you'll know. All those who have done the practice have seen the results of doing the practice. And they're not let down. They're all consistently amazed and live in a life of wonderment, the nature of the mind and body process and how it is manifesting, how it is arising and passing away, how it comes into existence when its conditions are present, and how it passes away when its conditions are no longer present. So I want you to practice with your lifting, moving, lifting, raising, moving, placing movement. It looks like this. You start standing, standing. Send your awareness to your feet, one of your right foot, touching. Move your awareness to your left foot, touching. When you're standing and you move your awareness from your right foot to your left foot and back again, can you feel your awareness moving between the feet? Can you feel your attention? Can you feel the sensation in this foot and then feel the sensation in the other foot? Sensations appear when consciousness touches them. We're sending and directing our awareness to specific locations and experiencing that object. So we're standing, that's awareness of the whole body all at once. And then we're aware of the touching sensation on the floor, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. Opening the eyes, seeing starts to occur when there's light and there's visible objects in the foreground. There will be some seeing. Don't look at anything. If you need to, go cross-eyed a little bit. Kind of bring yourself internalized. Don't allow your awareness to go outside of your body. We're not sending our awareness to investigate objects outside. That's not where suffering arises. The Buddha has told us that suffering arises in this body and it ceases in this body. There's no use for you to examine the outside world. The universe is happening here. This is where we need to do our work. So always try to keep your awareness inside you. For the next 7 days that you're here, try to keep your awareness inside your body at all times. If there's a sound, make a note of the hearing. If it's touching something, be aware of it. If it smells something, keep your awareness inside. Don't let it leak out into the environment. Your present moment awareness, your presence is always inside you, needs to be inside you. So seeing is occurring, and then lifting, stop. Raising, stop. Moving, stop. Placing, stop. Lifting, stop. Raising, stop. Moving, stop. Placing, stop. Lift, raise, move, place. Lift, raise, move, place. Lift, raise, move, place. Lift, raise, move, place. You can note in your own language if you want to. That's also fine. Make sure that you're sending your awareness into the moving foot. It should be in the moving foot at all times, following each of these 4 objects, each of these 4 stages. There's a sensation waiting to greet you if you can follow each of these stages. Try to give it some rhythm. The mind likes rhythm. If you can walk for 45 minutes as I just did then, and then you sit down, watch your sitting meditation explode. You'll be so present. If you're fully in your feet for 40 minutes, doing that, lifting, raising, moving, placing, lifting, raising, moving, placing, you don't have any time to think about anything at all. You'll be right in the zone. You'll be in the perfect stage, the perfect preparation. Then you sit down, boom. Hearing, sitting, touching, rising, falling, sitting, touching, rising, falling, sitting, touching. Da, 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 da. The 4-4 movement from your walking meditation can be replicated in the 4-4 movement of your sitting meditation. Lifting, raising, moving, placing, rising, falling, sitting, touching. The mind will get into a pattern. We're training the mind to move and jump between different objects. So give that a try. There was something else that I wanted to touch on as well. The arising of consciousness a little bit. I'll just touch on it now. We've been talking about the main object and the secondary objects. Try to keep your awareness on your main object. The main object while walking is obviously your feet. Your awareness should not be going outside of your feet for any reason at all. Try to keep your awareness in your feet. With the sitting meditation, it's the same thing. Try to keep your awareness inside the body. These are the main objects. As much as you can. You only note a secondary object when it comes to interfere with your main object. When you get knocked off your main object, then you can note what it is that knocked you off. We practice like this in the beginning stages, main objects, because we're training the mind, we're training the mental factors of the mind to be able to do their job. And it's good to be able to take a certain set of objects and train with that. We don't make it too difficult. We don't make it too broad. We don't give you 100 objects. That would be too many. We don't keep you with one object. That would just give you one-pointed samadhi. Probably conceptual. So we give you just enough objects to be able to train your ability to be present and to move inside the body from one location to another, both a small focused area and a broader field of sensation, like awareness of the whole body. We're learning to expand our awareness and contract our awareness into different locations, both sensations which are coming and going because of the breathing, and sensations which are always there but come and go because consciousness, the consciousness that knows them, comes and goes. These are the main objects. True Vipassana practice involves all 6 sense bases. And as our practice develops, we start to let go. Don't do it yet. There'll be a time for that, and during the interviews I'll be able to give you some more instruction about when that time is necessary. But we open up into a more broad, choiceless awareness. When our mental factors have been trained properly, then you'll be able to note whatever is going on. You won't need the security of a main object and then occasionally noting secondary objects, but you'll be able to open up into a choiceless bung, 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 bung. But your mind will need to be concentrated to be able to do that. So let's work on developing concentration, or awareness and wisdom. Sati Panya, which is stabilized. This is the type of concentration we want. The ability to be still in our observation while the objects are bouncing around. We're cognizing them, each one, and noting, knowing, and letting them go. We want to stabilize this viewing platform. Think of it as a camera on a tripod. It's very stable, it's very still. You catch a good picture when your camera is on a tripod. If you're riding on the back of a motorbike, trying to catch a good picture, it will be difficult because the camera is not stable. It's the same with our mind as well. If our mind is not stable, the view that we have is a little bit shaky. We may get it sometimes, and other times it'll just be fuzzy and blurry. So we need to work upon creating stability in our noting and knowing to make it as continuous as possible. This is why continuity is so important. It's the continuousness of the practice that leads to the mind becoming stabilized. If we're continuously noting and knowing, unwholesome states like the 5 hindrances can't arise, and the delightful objects of the senses no longer interest us. We're letting go of those things, and the mind is becoming more and more one-pointed, more and more stable, and so its ability to see and understand what is happening is becoming better. That's what we're doing. You can practice this at some point during the retreat, maybe in the break times, during the interview time. If you're not coming for an interview, you can continue your practice. I've seen some of you come and you're starting to walk in the hall before we ring the bell, have a cup of tea, half an hour rest is enough for you. Get back in here. I encourage you to do that. Come and do some walking meditation or further sitting meditation if you want to. Try to be as continuous as possible. With my teacher, we practice from 2 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. 4 sessions daily of 4 hours each. 8 hours walking meditation, 8 hours sitting meditation, continuously. Day in, day out, without stopping. It's that type of continuity which needs to be developed. So when you have a little in the break, you can do it just as an exercise. Try to become aware of the arising of consciousness at the sense bases. Become aware that seeing is occurring, hearing is occurring, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. Seeing is occurring, and just try to do it. Look at something and then pull yourself back inside. Seeing, oh, that's the object he's talking about. Not looking, but the fact that seeing is occurring. And do the same with hearing. Sit outside and maybe smell the forest if you need to. Become aware of the arising of smelling and the passing away of smelling. Don't be so interested in what it is that you're smelling. You don't need to identify, what is that flower? What is that smell of grass? What is that smell of whatever it is? We're not in the business of identifying smells. We want to know and understand when smelling is occurring. Just this act of consciousness that's arising in the present moment. It passes away very quickly. So we're going to learn how to jump between the sense doors. These are secondary objects. They're often trying to compete for our attention. We're busy rising, falling, sitting, touching, rising, falling, sitting, touching. But our sense doors are being activated by the objects in the environment. So we need to note when that is being activated. You only do it in the beginning when it interferes with your practice. But you can do it as a little exercise in your free time, sitting there with your cup of tea, sitting at the tables up there or anywhere else. Become aware of the warmth of the cup, touching. Become aware of the smell of the tea. Become aware of the taste of the tea. Tasting is occurring. We don't need to go into the story of, oh, it's so sweet. Why do they put so much sugar into it? What's wrong with them? No need for you to go into that kind of conversation. Just note, tasting is occurring. Smelling is occurring. Hearing is occurring. Seeing is occurring. All these acts of consciousness are nature in action. Consciousness is an element of the universe. The universe, the world is pervaded by a consciousness which is knowing things. And that consciousness is arising in this body. This body is a receiver of consciousness. It's able to tune in, just like a radio receiver. That's what the eyes are. They're receivers for the consciousness. They make seeing happen. What happens when the body dies? The consciousness no longer arising in those locations. And the thing acts like a dead body. It's a log lying on the floor, useless thing. The batteries have run out. It's no longer receiving consciousness. Consciousness manifests at the ears, at the nose, at the tongue, at the body, and of course at the mind door. It's arising and it's passing away. Quantum physicists are starting to realize and understand this now. It's taken a long time, 26 centuries, but they're catching up to understand the nature of consciousness. Because we can't see it with our instruments, it's very difficult to understand it. But the double slit experiment showed that consciousness is affecting our environment. So we want to watch this consciousness arising. Watch it arising at your receivers, at your doors. You're actually a combination of 6 receivers. And these 6 receivers have their own objects that they can receive. And consciousness that arises in that sphere. The eye sphere, it's a particular group of knowledges that can arise. The ear, the nose and the tongue, the body and the mind, 6 different spheres in which consciousness arises and passes away. The brain is very active. The brain is what is able to synthesize all this incoming data, drop what is unnecessary in the present moment, focus on a few things, and that's what we call living. We can't focus on every aspect. We're being bombarded by sensory experience continuously. The brain is filtering out that experience and giving us just like Facebook does, I guess. Filters out all your friends and delivers you only the very few people that you contact every now and then. The brain's filtering out stuff. So we want to watch the arising of consciousness in this way as well. So you can practice doing that. Just sit comfortably. Sit outside with your cup of tea. Open yourself to presence. And note, oh, seeing is, now the unit is seeing. Oh, now it's hearing something. Now it smells stuff. Now it's touching the seat. Now it's seeing again. Now it's hearing again. Just pay attention to it like that. It's not you. Don't take any of it personally. Don't think that you're a person sitting there. There is a body, and consciousness is manifesting through it. Okay, I think that's probably enough for this afternoon.